First we listen to, and those of us who are already trained, then we can join, and then the others can join. We'll repeat it.
परम्परस्थं गहनादनादिम् एकं निविष्टं बहुधा गुहासु सर्वालयं सर्वचराचरस्थं त्वामेव शम्भुं शरणं प्रपद्ये परम्परस्थं गहनादनादिम् एकं निविष्टं बहुधा गुहासु सर्वालयं सर्वचराचरस्थं त्वामेव शम्भुं शरणं प्रपद्ये परम्परस्थं गहनादनादिम् एकं निविष्टं बहुधा गुहासु सर्वालयं सर्वचराचरस्थं त्वामेव शम्भुं शरणं प्रपद्ये.
Once more.
परम्परस्थं गहनादनादिम् एकं निविष्टं बहुधा गुहासु सर्वालयं सर्वचराचरस्थं त्वामेव शम्भुं शरणं प्रपद्ये.
As the Buddhists are taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, here the Sharanam, it is to Shambhu, to Shiva. And who is that Shiva? He is the Supreme, Param, beyond. And he is beyond the abyss, Gahanad Parastam. And this abyss is interpreted as Maya. Anadi, the beginningless one, the one, Ekam, although he is one, he has entered many caves, Bahuta Guhasu Nivishtam. And cave is a very ancient symbol for heart. So being one, he has entered many hearts. Sarvalayam, he is the abode of everything, of all. Sarvacharacharastam, and he is immanent in all animate and inanimate beings. To you, Shambhu, I take refuge. Now, yesterday was only an introduction to the Shiva Sutras and their context, so that you have a framework in which we can work now with the text. But the actual retreat starts today. And I always call these seminars retreat seminars because we have to combine the two aspects, the learning of a text, teaching, and the practice, meditation, and the reflection, and so on. So actually, such a retreat seminar consists of, could roughly be said to consist of three parts. One is the text teaching, the learning, absorbing the text and the tradition. 1/3 is a meditation, our meditation practice. And the third part would be our personal integration, because these two aspects, the teaching and the meditation, it is a common enterprise. But the third part is how do we integrate this, what we are learning, what we are practicing, into our life, our present life situation. So what you do in a retreat, you reflect on which situation in life you are now, and what is this retreat doing to you? Why are you here? What are you searching? So this is the third part, is very much your homework. Bless you. Huh? Oh, I didn't even notice. I didn't notice. So the important task before us is to integrate these three parts, to connect the text with the meditation and with our own reflection, with our own integration, and to lead to that integration of which I have talked yesterday. And this is a repetition for those who have attended so many seminars, but I think these repetitions are necessary, and for those who are not so familiar with this tradition, it is important to say it, because every tantra in this tradition says there are three ways of attaining enlightenment or realization. And of course, the most obvious one in the Indian tradition is if you have a guru, Gurutaha. So from the guru. And here immediately I have to mention that Swami Lakshmanju, who was the last master in this tradition, who left his body in 1991, he was the last to really represent the fullness of the tradition. But we are not so fortunate that he is still in the body. So what to do when you don't have a guru? The second is Shastra. The text is there. The texts are there to guide us, and you can reach enlightenment just by reading one sutra, if you're ready for that. Sometimes, it happens, it just strikes you, and you don't need anything else. And there are many examples for that. Not only the great sages and saints, but I know many people who come and they say, they just read one shloka of the Vijnana Bhairava, and that was it. So the Shastra, Gurutaha, Shastrataha, and Svataha, by yourself. So these are traditionally given as the three ways to realize the ultimate reality. From the Guru, from the text, and text means, of course, the basic texts, the tantras and the basic scriptures, and by yourself. So yourself, that is, again, as I say, it's your homework. But what you have to do yourself. Even the guru will tell you, you have ultimately to do it yourself. He may give you initiation, may give you instruction, he may give you all kinds of blessings and so on, but you have to do it. So that svataha is very important. And these three ultimately and ideally they should be combined so that if you are blessed to have a guru and you also read the Shastras or at least some Shastra, and then you have your own experience. And if all the three are combined and they confirm each other, then this is the ideal. But it is not always happening. But at least we know that reading such a text like the Shiva Sutras, it is one of our gurus, one of our ways of approaching the ultimate reality, which in this tradition we call Bhairava. Now, since we are a rather intimate, small group, and which is good because it gives us more, we may, especially in meditation and so on, we will be growing together, and it's good and better than a big group, 50 people or 100 people. It's very difficult to have that kind of concentration. So I would like to start with a self-introduction so that we know each other and I know you as far as possible, and then of course we'll get to know each other during the coming days. But at least I should have a first self-introduction. Self-introduction means don't just say only your name, say only your profession, but what is your approach to Kashmir Shaivism or to practice, or whether you're practicing Buddhism or which tradition of Buddhism, whatever it may be. Because we are practicing together, so we should have that basic understanding of our approach to this retreat. So where do we start? Sureshji.
My name is Suresh Jindal.
Take the mic.
My name is Suresh Jindal. I've been a Buddhist practitioner since 1999. Started with Holiness Dalai Lama, and also Dzongkar Khyentse Rinpoche is also one of my main teachers. And before that, I had a brief brush with Kashmir Shaivism because I used to go to Swami Muktananda in Ganeshpuri. But I was in the film industry. I'm a film producer. And at that time, what I tell people, I was a weekend spiritualist, you see. So I didn't really take any intensive teachings from Baba, which I regret, because I was too caught up in my samsaric ambitions. But as we say in Buddhism, the seeds were probably planted. And then I was fortunate enough to have Bettina ji come and teach us here. This is the fourth text I'm taking from her. And I'm also associated with Deer Park as an advisor to the board. Thank you.
I'm Usha. I'm coming from Germany. Originally, I'm brought up in a Christian context. And many years ago, I felt I have to look for a teacher who guides me beyond what I could learn in Christianity. And I was very long time, I was looking for someone, and 2008 I was very lucky to meet by chance. I went to a seminar. It is called Vijnana Bhairava, and this was led by Bettina ji, and I never knew anything about Kashmir Shaivism. That year I wanted to go to Kailash, but it was when the Olympic Games were on and the Chinese had closed the border, and I felt very much in a desert inside because I was so much looking for it. And so I came to this seminar, and it was opening doors inside and outside for me, and my whole life has changed. And now I'm a disciple of my master, and I'm going my way on this path, Kashmir Shaivism. And I'm very, very lucky to have found this way. Even for my work, I'm a psychotherapist. The way I'm working is coming from psychoanalysis, deriving and integrating other methods. And many people are come to the point they ask, what is going beyond? And so I even can integrate my own experiences and what I learn by those seminars and texts. I can integrate it in my work, and this work is going on, and it's the best thing that could happen in my life. Thank you.
I'm D.P. Singh. I'm an Indian, born in a very humble agrarian family. I never had any theosophical background or theological background. But being an Indian, what you are born with, that certainly was there. And as the luck would have it, I had a chance of having education in Varanasi in Krishnamurti Foundation of India, as they call it, Rajghat Basin School. And there, I think most of the grooming, most of the seeds were put into me. And I feel today that that 5 years that I had as a child in Benares did me a lot. And ever after passing out from there, I moved on my journey, became an engineer, a telecom engineer, joined a service, a Indian telecom service, which I'm very much a part at the moment. But I was always looking for the Varanasi, because that has left a great impression on me, and I really was wanting to be there. And as Shambhu always looks at you and grants you what you really deserve or what you really aspire intently from within. So I got a posting there in Varanasi, and as the luck would have it, I was thinking that I wouldn't be lasting in that posting for 15 days, but I lasted for 4 years, and maybe 5 years, because I was in a place which is nearby. And it is during this span that I consciously discovered most of Varanasi and most of what it has. And during that process, I came in touch with a lot of my teachers, and it is in that happening that I came in touch with Bettina Ji. It was a little soft touch with her, and then was a lull for a fairly long time. And then we began, then it started again, And it had been a great journey and a great experience, I would say. Perhaps I was not qualified for it, but yes, it happens to, if you're really looking for it. And as you said a little while ago, that something has to be done swata, and that swata was working with me. And with that swata, all this has happened, and I'm with you all. Thank you so much.
I'm Gitu Purna. This area has been very important for me, these Dhauladhars. I was very lucky to have lived here. And my childhood, I think we're all talking of seeds being planted. It left a great impression. The nature, the beauty, and something beyond it. And when I grew up, I went away to the cities, and I miss this place a lot. It's not just the place, the inner place inside you. And then I came back to Dharamsala, and I I was anyway in touch with Tibetan Buddhism, and I started studying Tibetan Buddhism, and it gave me a lot. And but it was in 2009, I think September, when Bettina ji taught in Deer Park for the first time, that there was a special corner I turned, and the journey ever since has been, I mean, it recaptured the experiences of my childhood, and I kind of came home. I came home inside. It's very difficult to put it in words, but now I'm home. And there is, it's a beautiful journey. And thank you so much, Bettina ji.
Hello, I'm Belinda from the UK, and last May I came to Deer Park looking for meditation techniques to continue my search on the spiritual journey. Prior to that, I had a Christian upbringing, and so from quite a young age I was very much inspired by the teachings of Christ, but somehow walked away from religion. I came to India about 3 years ago, wanting to quench my thirst, my spiritual thirst. And when I came to Deer Park last May, Bettina rocked my world with a text of the Vijnana Bhairava. And really it touched something very deep inside me. Subsequently, I have continued with, this will be my 4th text, and through the help of Bettina ji, I'm building my inner temple, strengthening and entering a very beautiful reality. So thank you, Bettina.
Hello, I'm Vandana. And I live in Delhi and I live in Bir as well. I'm born in a family. My dad is Punjabi. My mother came from Bombay. She has Jewish and Parsi blood in her. So we were brought up in a home which didn't follow any particular tradition. And we were left to believe, we did believe in a force, and all we would do would light a candle and do a little prayer whenever there was, any kind of occasion. So there were no rituals or no particular text to follow. So that left me with an openness to seek answers to questions that I had in any tradition. And over the years I've read anything that has come my way, from Vedanta to Buddhism, some Kabbalah, but not much. And with the same curiosity, I'm approaching Kashmiri Shaivism as well. I'm a filmmaker, and I'm also a photographer and a musician. And I find that attitude spills into my work as well, because I made a film on anger recently. It's called The Subtext of Anger. And I traveled the world to shoot with experts from different traditions, different sciences, to put it all together. So I think that's really the overall attitude, to find whatever it is from any tradition and from any doorway of knowledge. And I also believe that every single tradition actually at the essence is saying really the same thing. It's just interesting to know how they're saying it.
Hello everybody, I'm Roshan. I come originally from Kerala, but I lived most of my life in Delhi and outside India. I'm a lawyer and a script writer for art films. And I started engaging with the esoteric world through Vedanta in my teenage years. But that was more of intellectual acrobatics. It gave me a sense of higher ego. And I'm not very sure that I actually realized much. But maybe it was useful to sharpen the intellectual tool also. Later, I moved into something that I could experience. I come from Kerala, so we practiced the Sri Vidya Tantra there. And it was easier for me to gain access to that area. And from there, I progressed gradually to the Shiva Sutras. And the Shiva Sutras of Jayadev Singh, when I opened it, it was like like a nuclear bomb. It just, from the first sutra, it just blasted everything away that was there before. And I've not been able to totally understand where I am as of now, because I have not had a guru, so I have not had a systematic regimen of practice. So this is what I'm really searching for, a regimen that I could follow step by step. I have problems restraining my aspiration, probably because of my age and energy. So I understand that effortless effort is a very crucial aspect. But recently, when I was at Bihar Yoga Bharati, I had the opportunity to go to Bodh Gaya and to read some of the Buddhist teachings of the Mahayana and Theravada school. And Karuna, compassion, as a foundational way of being, I found is a very powerful practice, and that's why I came here to Biru after that. And I would really like to stay on to volunteer at this place after the course, so that I can follow up with the practices in the right environment. And I'm really lucky to be here with Swami Lakshmanaju's disciple. I always wanted to learn from one of his chief disciples. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Maya, and I was named Maya because my mother was studying Buddhism when she was pregnant with me, and liked the idea of, if she had a daughter, of naming me after the Buddha's mother. And so my life, and my father's Indian. I was brought up in Nasik, in a small town in India. And so my early exposure was to Hinduism. But there was always an interweaving with Buddhism. There were caves nearby, very ancient Buddhist caves, that we went to all through my childhood. And my adult life has also been sort of a journey both through Hinduism and Buddhism. I lived and studied with Swami Muktananda, and that's where I was first introduced to the Shiva Sutras. And it's a very complicated story there. But when he passed away, I was living in America and sort of lost, and turned to Buddhism in a very deep way. And sort of, what shall I say, put Hinduism on the side. And just recently, when I was in Delhi and bought the Shiva Sutras again and opened the book, I just felt such joy. It was like coming back to something, that reverberated very deeply within me. So I'm very grateful to be here and very looking forward very much to studying with you. Thank you.
I am Ashish, and I am basically from Kashmir. And in 1990, we had to migrate to Jammu, to other place. And due to that incident, I always felt like I'm always away from my roots, because in my childhood I have to migrate to other place, away from my roots. And from early childhood I had heard about Kashmir Shaivism, but I didn't know what it is and how to explore it more. But I used to practice, you can say meditation, but it started from the normal puja, what every day, every family does in India. And but somehow I went like, after some years, like it developed into something else. I never used to burn the candle or the incense, and it developed and kept on developing. I kept on reading something from here, something from there, and some yoga exercises and all this. And finally one day I came to know that my grandfather used to practice Kashmir Shivism, and one of his disciples introduced me properly to Kashmir Shivism, and she referred some books of Swami Lakshman ji to me, and then I was properly introduced to Kashmir Shivism. And then after that I'm searching and trying to understand the meanings and of the text which is written in these beautiful books, and some things I understand and some things I'm not able to understand what it is. And I was lucky enough to find ashram in Kashmir where I went last year, and it was really an experience and a life-changing interaction with one of the masters of Kashmir Shivism. And with her blessings, I have started to understand some things little more, and I'm in search of my inner self, and that's all. And I'm thankful to Blinda. She introduced me to Bettina ji, and I wanted to meet Bettina ji from last 1 year, but unfortunately I was not able to come for her classes or her retreat. But this time, fortunately, I am able to, and I'm happy that I am here. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Mohit Yadav, and I'm originally from Haryana, but I've been all around India because my father was in the defense, so we've been posted every 5 years. We'd shift around and stuff like that. As a kid, someone told me that, you're so lucky, you're born in a free country and blah blah blah, you're not a slave and all that. So, and then when I had to go to school, the first thing I said, I don't want to go to school. And they said, no, you have to go to school. But I said, I'm free, I don't want to go to school. And so, I guess that's the first instance when I started to figure out that what is freedom? How can you be really free? If I have to spend half the day doing something which someone else tells me, it's okay once in a while, every day. So started there. And when we shifted from Delhi when I was in class 3rd, so 4th class we went to Bombay. And Bombay I was in a Jesuit school, so they are all the Christian stuff. And I really could relate to what Christ said, that treat others as you want to be treated. So I sort of kept practicing that. And obviously it's still going on. And other than that, yeah, I've had quite a few accidents. So each time I have an accident and I'm recovering physically, I discover I have some more body parts to reconnect to, So, so I think I'm sort of done with that, and I can't really remember names and all, but so whatever I read, when I start reading a spiritual book or something, after some time, maybe when I've reached 15 pages and I've understood something and absorbed it, a lot of times I just let it go because I know I can't understand what's ahead. But that's another thing I understood, is that I cannot understand everything. I mean, I take it for a fact. So I don't have that urge to know everything, but I'm grateful for whatever I can understand. And I like Shiva because he's an angry god. I mean, and that was the first initial attraction, because I used to get angry and everyone say, don't get angry. And I discovered anger is just a sort of energy, so you can transform it to something else. And the transformation is going on, and I'm sure this course will help a lot. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Felicitas and I'm from Germany, but I've lived here half my life. Actually, I've raised my family here. I was born a Christian, and I was very much brought up in the Christian context, and I've never given it up, or I've never consciously put it aside. But living here, other things came my way that I got involved to and got interested in. I haven't actually met Bettina really deeply, briefly once, but I've known of her and about her for a long time, and there's other friends of mine who've joined her retreats and kept on telling me, why don't you? And it just so happens that it fits in. I've come here in Deer Park. I've been to Deer Park many times. I've joined many teachings and courses here. And yes, I don't know anything about the Shiva Sutras. I'm very curious and looking forward to find out, and add it to the things that I'm searching for, that I'm looking for, that will broaden my spiritual horizon. What I'm interested really is all the overlapping things, all the things that actually make me understand more about my own traditional background, my own spiritual background, to understand more, and come back to it and feel at home. Another thing is maybe that while raising my children, I always felt, what is it that I can tell them? What is it where I can give them a base and an understanding how to find their path? And the only thing I could give them is the little bit I got from my own upbringing, just to plant that seed, and then the next thing, the exposure that they had growing up in this country and the schools they went to. So anyway, now I'm looking forward to these days together, and yes, thank you that I can be with you here.
Hi, everyone calls me Kat, so I'm Kat. I come from England. I don't have any religious background as such. Obviously in England it's more of a Christian within teachings, within education, but personally I guess I was a bit of a, not a rebel, but I took the only essence of these teachings, which is what I live by and what I try to teach, which is just to be a good person. I don't really have a career as such, but all my roles has always been listening, observing and helping. I've just finished 3 years working with autistic children, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And unfortunately I had to leave the role due to a misunderstanding with a boss. But I hope to go back, and one of my main concerns with autistic people as they get older, they suffer a lot from depression and anxiety, and there's not much out there, and it's very hard understanding for them to come to terms with these feelings. So in my head, I'd like to combine practices that I learn, taking the essence to a very simplistic form to help them in the future to realise that they don't need to worry about things that they worry about, and that they can be happy and peaceful and, you know, put up with us neurotypical people who just harass them all the time. So to do that, I felt within myself, because unfortunately within the last year my meditation practice has, due to physical as well as mental, has slightly declined. So I believe for me to be able to help people as much as I would like to, I need to make myself a better person and get my practice going to a point where that little light shines a bit brighter. I guess I come from more of a Buddhist background. I spent a year in China about 5 years ago with the Shaolin masters, so they taught me a lot about compassion and strength, inner and outer, and I'm a strong believer in that aspect of life, and that we're the training of the mind, because I'm a martial artist background. Doing that has taught me a lot about life and the capability of the human mind and just how lazy we can be. So I'm hopefully trying to get more energetic within my mind and within my body and my soul.
Hello everyone, I'm Daisy, or you can call me Jane. I'm come from China, Shanghai. Actually, I do not have any religious background, and I was brought up and educated in a country that religion is considered to be unscientific. Yeah, because we are ruled by the Communist Party. So my generation and my father's generation and my grandfather's generation actually they don't have any religious belief. However, when I graduate and I work in Shanghai, as you know, the life in the big city with the economic development is the focus, and the life is very fast, intense. That is, but somehow I also noticed that the society works as also the people do something not quite right to me. They just pursue the wrong thing and they just do it wrongly. That is my first impression. And I started to read a lot of books recommended by a lot of friends, like Buddhism, Taoism, or Zennism. Somehow I find there are some truths in religions, in these teachings. That is, and also a year ago I practiced yoga. It just gave me so much. It made me refreshed in my physically and mentally. So my energy is up and my physical improves. That is how I came to know Shiva, because in yoga practice we worship Shiva as a god. So I found this course by Bertina. I was grateful that she can accept me, because I'm a shallow learner and really I don't know much about the textbook, but I just came with a grateful heart, and I promise I will work hard.
Hi. Excuse me. My name is Sean, and I'm from the United States. You can hear me? Yeah. My work was remodeling houses and apartments before I came to India, and before that I was a massage therapist. I was brought up in a family where religion was, my family, my father and mother were kind of Christian, but they didn't really push anything on us. We went to church maybe a few times a year, and my mother really wanted us to choose our own religion when we grew older. And so there was a kind of feeling of openness around spirituality in my family. I myself was very spiritual, religious type, and so I was reading a children's Bible very much my whole childhood. And then when I was old enough, starting to read the Bible, and I came to a point where I ended up rejecting Christianity because I couldn't believe in a God who would send people to hell. But it started me on a search for religion and spirituality in general outside of Christianity, and which was very intense and has kind of continued to this day. I can't say I've completely rejected Christianity, but these kinds of ideas that this is what God is, that God could send someone to hell, yes, I think I still have a problem with that. But, then I became, after wandering the fields of spirituality and religion for many years, I ended up becoming a Buddhist in 2000 and was very much just really on that track, not really reading things from other traditions or anything. And I had an opportunity to come to India and Nepal and study Tibetan language and Buddhist philosophy, which I was doing very intensely for some time. Now in the last few years, I've been expanding myself a little bit beyond that. I've been exploring the Pali tradition beyond Tibetan Buddhism and doing Vipassana meditation. And then now, the last year or so, learning more about Kashmiri Shaivism, which I learned a little bit about in the States before I became Buddhist. And then also been exploring Advaita Vedanta. So I feel like I'm learning a lot from all three traditions, the Kashmiri Shaiva, the Advaita Vedanta, and Buddhism. And I'm kind of, that's pretty much where my mind is going in looking at all the Indian traditions, especially non-dual traditions, and wanting to really understand them and find a way to maybe integrate them some way in my life. So, thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Hello, Miss Bettina. I'm very nervous. I'm sorry. I've never done this before. Yeah. So, dear Miss Bettina, thank you so much for having me here. My name is Anubhav Tanvar, and I come from a banking father. My father's a banker, Mr. Shyam Singh Tanvar, and a musician grandfather, Amir Singh Tanvar. And okay, thank you. So when I was a kid, my parents kept moving a lot, and I couldn't focus much because I couldn't really develop my inner natural evolution as a child. So Sanskrit, I was not very good at academics, and Sanskrit was the only thing that rescued me from that. And that was only my mother is a Sanskrit teacher, and she taught me when I was not very I was sort of isolated. And I topped my class as a Sanskrit student. I had a teacher named Jawaharlal, Mr. Jawaharlal. And sorry. And as far as meditation is concerned, I recently encountered meditation. I don't have a lot of experience, but in meditation, it's I was doing a management course. And I was supposed to take a meditation course during that course. And I did Vipassana for 10 days. And that was my introduction to meditation. And I hope to understand the hairline difference between here with you, ma'am. I hope to understand the hairline difference between Buddhism and Hinduism, and how Buddha actually complemented the Hindu philosophy. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. You hear me?
No. Your name?
I'm not used to speak into, okay?
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Helena. In my family, there were no religious values, which gave me, I think, some liberty. My life is very long, so I will start with my hippie years. I came to India first time in 1975 And I didn't understand in this time what was going on inside me. There was a very, very strong longing for something, like also to connect with Mother Earth, I didn't really know, and then I was really guided in this time, and I was living in the lake in Arambol in Goa, and this is where I read my first book on Buddhism. 23 years old, and I thought, wow, but this is me. It was like everything what I was reading was completely known. And then in 78, in Copenhagen, I took refuge with His Holiness the 16th Karmapa. And how to say, and I never practiced things like intellectually or in a dogma. So I do meditation, and I try in my life, like Buddhism, to introduce everything in my life and to live it in action, in consciousness. To make it short, I was in France. I was a counselor, and when I wrote my memory for this, I realized that what always was important for me was the being. Like you can say in French you say, how you say this in English, avoir et être, being and having, you know. And that the research in all my life always was being. And then I had a shop in Barcelona, and I meditated from time to time and did some yoga or some 5 Tibetans and Qigong and things like this, but I'm not at all disciplined. And the shop, for example, also was not to sell. The shop was a special energy point to communicate with the being, with others. It always in everything what I did, I mean, I realized this not a long time ago, there was this. And then I had a stroke 2 years ago, which changed also my life, and it looks like it opened some energy things. And I came to India 9 months ago. I was 5 months in India. And I had some experiences, like in Shiva Sutras. I can say the first one. There have been different ones. In the Shiva Puja, in the temple, suddenly my jaw fell down, and my bones were moving, and my whole body got aligned. And I mean, I knew who was Shiva. I mean, I know the story and things like this, but I was not at all into anything. I have to say, before, some years ago in internet, I was reading something about Kashmiri Shivaism. And I said, oh wow, but that's for you. This is really great. I felt it, but then I went on and doing something else. So I had other experiences, very strange experiences, where energy is working on one side or on the heart. And then chance is not chance. I met in Kopan in a monastery, in a Buddhist monastery in Nepal, Belinda, and she brought me here somehow. She Belinda. Yeah. She told me about this course, and I'm very grateful, and I'm very happy to be here. And what I'm looking for is to get, to be able to discipline myself and to have how can you call this? A technique which helps me to get more awaken and arise consciousness. Thank you very much, everyone.
Namaste. My name is Karos, and it's the first time in my life I'm in India, and I can say it's a very strong experience, as well as an artist, as for my health, and of course also the spiritual path. That's main in that. Well, there's lots to say, but there's a strong heart connection anyhow with Indian culture, also from my family, and that's going in deep, deep, deep from my mother's side, but also from just direct heart connection just lately in the Baksu, where I was happy to offer a baby cobra to the Baksu temple. So, well, I was just integrated in the 3 times all of a sudden. Or not me, but the little cobra, but I go with it somehow. And so that's why I'm here, to get more knowledge and also more understanding from where I feel like I just fell from, from a kind of flying carpet here, and I don't know what's going on. So, I'm just very eager to learn. And I must say that when I was reading, trying to getting into the text last night, I thought, my God, am I ever going to have able to follow this? But somewhere I just opened in the middle, like I used to do with, religious. Important religious books. If I have a question, I just open on a page and say, well, this is going to give me the answer. I just fell on the page completely explaining what I'm experiencing while meditating. So that gave me the courage to be here again and to put on my best and to see what's going and be in the presence. So I'm very happy to be here, and this experience was going to be Shukriya.
My name is Tripta. I have lived most of my life in Delhi, and I've worked as a writer, a creative educator, and as an editor. I have to say that I think my spiritual journey has been something that I've been engaged in forever. As a child, I had a lot of questions, and I figured that I didn't get satisfactory answers to my questions. For instance, when I was very little, I used to ask my mother, who made me? And that was a spiritual question. And she said, well, Bhagwan ne banaya, God made you. So I sort of went away with that and mulled over it. And then the next question I had to ask was, who made God? So, and she said, a bigger God make that God. And so I sort of realized that I would have to find my own answers. I think I've always had this feeling that I was going towards something important in my life. And when I was 23, I call that a turning point in my life, because I went through something which was very, very significant. And since then, it's just, what I can say is that my life is an expression of integration and understanding. Because of what I saw around myself, I felt that ritual and organized religion is something I have to consciously move away from because of its meaninglessness and its hypocrisy and its irrelevance. So my exploration in anything that I've lived has been to be with the essence and to live with the essence in any tradition. I've always been interested in every spiritual tradition. But over the last few years, I sort of felt very strongly that I need to immerse myself in the Buddha's teaching. So I've been doing that. And I came to Deer Park a little over 2 years ago for the first time. And I felt a very special connection with this place, which I continue to feel. And I think the connection is also deeper at the level of being in the hills and being in a field where the energy is very palpable. I've observed and seen you in Deer Park the last 2 years when I've been here and you've taught, but somehow, very naturally, I felt that the time for me to engage in this is not right. But this time I have to say that I just felt from the inside that I have to attend this course, so I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
My name is Munisha. I've been studying Buddhism for many years. Last year I moved to Bir, and I was very fortunate in September to attend your teachings, Bettina ji. Extraordinary teachings. I'm really grateful to be here again today. Thank you.
My name is Angachita. I'm a Buddhist monk. I'm originally Japanese. So Bettina ji, since Bettina ji first teaching in Deer Park, I joined her teaching 3 times. For me, it's quite different, but very familiar feeling from her teaching. So that's why I joined each time. Then also interesting, quite different, this how to say, Buddhist circle people too, and also for me interesting. So, but I'm very happy to join this teaching also. Thank you.
So it's very good. We get a feeling of with whom we are practicing, with whom we are sitting. But now that we have expressed ourselves, we go into silence. So I think just a few words about the discipline, so that we make full use of the time, because the time is limited. And the text is big. Of course, we have to select, but so in order to make full use, our self-discipline is very important. So silence is, you please read the last line on the timetable. Silence is not something, discipline which is imposed from outside, that I am a very bad teacher, you have to keep silence now. This has to come from within. It has to be, if you want to do a retreat, it has to come from within. Your urge to be with yourself and also to let others be with themselves. So the moment you break the silence, that you go at another level, and we will have a lot to do in the text with the good and bad sides of language. So language can be so destructive, and it can, of course, be a great step to concentration. But first of all, we have to listen within and to reach that inner silence. And then only we can receive what the text has to give us, what this tradition has to give us. So silence should be your own need or your own urge. So it's not that it is anything imposed from outside. And then we will become more sensitive, more subtle, and more capable of understanding the words, which of course will be revealed to us. Now, I hope you don't feel that this time of self-introduction was a waste of time, because we have so much to study in this Shiva Sutras. But what I have heard from all of you, if we put it together, there are so many different life stories, different relations to different traditions and so on. And I must tell you, the very first seminar I gave here on Vijnana Bhairava, we had 32 participants from 6 religions. But really religions, I mean, the Jewish came from Israel, and the Jesuits, so not just somebody who has some Christian background, but really very solid. So I said, how am I going to deal with all that? And of course the Buddhists. But then the main thing which happened was neither an effort on my side, but it was at the basis of the spiritual experience and spiritual practice taught in the Vijnana Bhairava. These differences did not matter at all. And everybody could find their own source, their own inner being, without giving it a label, I am a Buddhist, I am a Christian. These labels are not important. What is important is the experience and that consciousness, which is the main theme of this whole tradition. So these differences are not what concerns us, but we will go into that foundational consciousness which unites us beyond any limitations of traditions or religions, etc. Now, also the balance we have to strike is between, because I see that not many of you have a background in Sanskrit or Shaivism or something, to be faithful to the text. One can make it something very superficial, I just make a little extract from the text, but that will not do justice, because the text has its own power. So to be faithful to that power of the text, and at the same time to be able to communicate to you so that it doesn't go above your head and you feel somehow lost in that complicated system. So I am also open, of course, to, in the afternoon, if anybody has any question, or to personal talks when we go out or when we are wherever. But the mornings should be in silence. So if you have any questions, we have time to talk on them. And also the questions regarding the teaching now, when we are starting with the text, I would prefer if you don't interrupt, because sometimes then the flow gets broken, and there is really a lot to, if you note your questions either on paper or in your mind, and then at the end of each session you can ask your questions. But in between it is sometimes an interruption. Now we come to the Shiva Sutras, which you have heard the introduction yesterday. First, I'm just telling you what are the texts. Everybody has a text. Who does not have a text? Aripapri. But you have your own book. But you have your own book, no? Not Jaidev Singh. But they have made, they sent a circular asking who has the book and who needs it. So they made 15 copies, and they are in the bookshop. I don't know if everybody...
There'll be somebody now. We have the break now. The shop will be open now, so you can get it now.
Yeah, I mean, you please, those who don't have it, please try to get, if the copies are exhausted, they can make some other photocopy in the village or somewhere.
If you have computer, I give PDF file also. I can give PDF Shiva Sutra. If you have computer or some notepad.
We are working with the text of Jadav Singh because it is directly you have the Sanskrit text and the translation. Of course, Sanskrit text is in Devanagari, so for those who cannot read Devanagari, it doesn't matter. We will read it, you will hear it, and only the sutras are transliterated, but the sutras are, of course, very brief. Now we have those who know Sanskrit. We have made a few copies only of the sutras, those who want. So that just to have a survey of the sutras. No. For those who know the Sanskrit, my dear. Yeah, but you get the book anyhow. You have? Yeah, Dorosha. Then there are Swami Lakshmanju's teaching of the Shiva Sutras. That book is supposed to be still available. Who has got this? 1, 2, 3, only. Not many. Yeah. See, now this is based on an oral teaching of Swami Lakshmanju on the Shiva Sutras, so it gives a very living access to the text, and it's not exactly a translation of Kshemaraja's Vimarshini, but that is also contained. But it is the living tradition which he passes on and the experience. So this text is very important. I will quote sometimes, of course. So these are the two translations we have, and then we don't have multilingual, so there is one translation in Italian, one in French, but I don't think we have here people which are excellent. I mean, Lilian Silburn and Torella in Italian, French. Then there is, only not to confuse you, this book by Mark Tychkovsky, The Aphorisms of Shiva, but this is the translation of the other commentary by Bhaskara. Yesterday I told you there are two commentaries. But in the notes he also gives the difference between Kshemarajas. So only for those who want to continue with the text, because this is very much available, was published in Varanasi, Indica Books. And if when you go home, you want to come back to the Shiva Sutras, this is available, and it is also very readable. So let me just make a brief note to why I kept this photo. We have two models for meditation, and this is a Shiva from Vietnam. Now, what is so fascinating, yesterday I gave a little bit about the history of Shaivism, that there are periods in history when Buddhism and Shaivism were coexisting in Kashmir and in Southeast Asia, in Cambodia, in Vietnam, and there were even kings who were sponsoring both Buddhism and Shaivism. So one has to explore, these historical facts where these two traditions, two religions were coexisting peacefully, in spite of their doctrinal differences. So finding Shiva in Vietnam, and of course now he is in the Musée Guimet in Paris, but there are many other sculptures like this in Vietnam museums, those which have survived. So, I mean, you can look at it yourself, and I'm not giving any commentary now, but we keep this, and then this photo of Swamiji in the meditation hall. These two are just from the darshan, the example for meditation. But now I'm not going to speak on meditation. We can do that another time, either personally or generally. Now, the question of the Sanskrit, and those who don't know Sanskrit at all or very little, of course the sutras we cannot avoid reading and reciting them in Sanskrit. And then I will read something and then explain. I will read the translation, and we will find a middle way for those who don't know Sanskrit. But the language is, of course, very important. In some cases, we have to analyze the language itself. Now, yesterday, I have given you the whole story of the revelation of the Shiva Sutras, so we don't need to go back to that, because the commentary by Kshemaraja starts with that. So this is what I have already given, how he received those sutras. Then I also told you yesterday that Kshemaraja interprets the sutras in the light of the three upayas, three ways to liberation. That is from above the divine, that is the first section or Unmesha, first awakening, is dedicated to the divine way, Shambhavopaya. The second to the way of energy, Shaktopaya. And the third to the individual way, Anavopaya. Now, these sutras start with a very powerful statement. Now, those who have the book on page 6, page 6, yeah. Chaitanyam Atma. Now, yesterday I told you that the whole spirituality and philosophy is based on consciousness, Samvit Advayavada. Now, there are many different terms in Sanskrit for consciousness. Chit, no, Chaitanya is derived, Chaitana. But later, the authors have preferred one word for consciousness, which is Samvit. And Samvit became more prominent than Chaitanya because Chaitanya has some echo of Vedanta and some other schools, but Samvit was the specific term of the philosophy of Kashmir Shaivism later. And Samvit means actually an integration, integrated. Sam means always together, united. So it is an integrative consciousness, not an exclusive. Now the whole problem which we cannot avoid and which nobody can avoid dealing with these texts is the problem of translation. How to translate these powerful terms. Now the word consciousness itself, and here we have some psychologists, it has so many levels and so many implications, and we have been used as translators, because I am also a translator of Sanskrit texts. We got used to translating certain terms or certain words, but that doesn't mean it doesn't solve the problem. Now we have to be aware that consciousness is definitely not individual consciousness, because in psychology that means individual consciousness, but it means universal consciousness. And it does not mean subject-object dualistic consciousness. So I'm conscious of something. No. It is non-dualist, universal consciousness. So we don't have any other word, because when we speak of awareness, awareness means something which we are doing. So when you're practicing vipassana, or when you are practicing any of this kind of meditation, you practice awareness. That is your. But consciousness is not something you're doing. It is something which is there, which is basically there. Now, I am sure that from the very words, of course, the Buddhists will be a little shocked by the word Atma. But you have to be clear that Atma here does not mean what it means in Vedanta. And Atma means, he will come, that a commentary will come to the meaning of Atma. Atma means just the innermost nature of everything. It's not a substantial self, but it is the innermost nature of everything. Now, that's why the interpretation Kshemaraja gives now is most important. Unfortunately, this is so small print that the Sanskrit. I'm reading a little bit in Sanskrit and then we'll do the translation. Iha achetitasya kasyapi sattva abhavat chitikriya sarva samanya rupa iti chetayate iti chetana sarvagnya kriya kriya svatantra tasya bhava chaitanyam sarvajnana kriya sambandhamayam paripurnam svatantrem uchate. Now, but from the very beginning, Kshemaraja identifies, first of all, this consciousness, Chaitanya, with the universal consciousness, Sarva Samanya Rupa, it's universal. And he identifies it with freedom. And here comes the whole, the weight of the Svatantriyavada stated at the very beginning of the interpretation of consciousness. Consciousness is essentially freedom. So he begins in the translation, in this world nothing exists which is outside the range of consciousness. The activity of consciousness is universal throughout, Sarva Samanya Rupa. A conscious being is one who, this is a bit artificial language, but which conscious, which thinks, who is absolutely free in all knowledge and activity. Chaitanya, or consciousness, is the state of one who is Chaitana or conscious. Now, this suffix ya, it refers to bhava. Bhava means a state. It's an abstraction, as abstract noun, but it refers to a state of being, and that state of consciousness. And that state means it is a freedom in all knowledge and activity. Sarvajnana kriya svatantra. So these are very universal statements. They are not limited to any particular philosophy, but they are fundamental. Tasya bhava chaitanyam. So that state is called Chaitanya, the absolute consciousness or universal consciousness. Now, here comes, of course, the theological aspect of Shaivism, that this consciousness is divine consciousness. And it is Tasya Parama Shivasya Eva Bhagavata Asti. It is not any individual consciousness, it is the consciousness of the Supreme Being, of the Absolute Being, called Paramashiva. And immediately he adds that everything below Paramashiva, everything below that Absolute Being is asvatantra, is not free, lacks freedom. So now we have, I think we have to distribute these tattvas. In all the Shaiva agamas, there is a system of a description of the universe, of the totality of existence in terms of 36 elements or levels of reality called tattvas. And of course, the philosophers of Kashmir Shaivism, they had to deal with this. How to deal with this multiplicity of elements, and they had to deal with it both theoretically and practically in the spiritual practice. And because this is a non-dualistic system, of course, with the dualist it is different because these are all separate. But here you have that system of these 36 tattvas, you will have them on there, which describe, so to say, the totality of universal existence, right from earth to Shiva. And they always describe it in this way, from earth to Shiva. So from the lowest to the highest. And of course it's a hierarchy, but in certain texts, like by Abhinavagupta, this hierarchy gets inverted, from Shiva to earth. So every hierarchy, you can be rising or you can be descending. And it's not only a descent, it's also a rising. And the hierarchy described because through all these levels, you have to rise to the divine. But that Shiva who is a tattva is not the ultimate, it's not the Paramashiva, it's not the Parabhairava, but is still a tattva. That's why when you are going to the temple or doing some puja to Shiva, this is not the supreme. This is a tattva. Shiva is a tattva. The Paramashiva or Parabhairava can never be objectified, can never be an object of either worship or meditation or so that Shiva, who is an object of worship, meditation and thinking, is still at the level of the tattvas. So what he says here, that whatever is below Paramashiva, below the absolute reality, is asvatantra, lacks freedom. So that's why the highest quality of the divine is freedom. And the highest energy or Shakti of the divine is his energy of freedom, Svatantriya Shakti. You please tell me when I have to write something, I can write on the blackboard, but whiteboard, sorry. But I don't want to waste time, but if you need, I can always write it. Svatantriya Shakti is the highest energy of the divine. And everything else in the universe is dependent. Well, you have the not only dependent origination, but everything is dependent. From the elemental 5 basic elements, earth, etc., and then the elements of the sense perceptions, and so on and so on. What you have in Sankhya, these 25 categories or tattvas, which describe the universe and the human body and the human mind. And then in Shaivism you have 11 more. And this is very interesting. Why these 11? But it will come in the course of the text. But what he says here precisely is that whatever is below that level of the Absolute, the Supreme Shiva, that is lacks freedom. Now, and this is why is that freedom given, Swatantriya, given as the highest characteristic of consciousness and of the Supreme Shiva. There are other attributes. He says there are so many other attributes of the divine, like eternity, all-pervasiveness, formlessness, etc. But there are other realities which also have these qualities. For example, in Prakriti, nature is also called eternal. And so there are other, in different systems of Indian philosophy and cosmology, we should say, there are different entities which are eternal or which are all-pervasive. Akasha, for example, the space, open space, is all-pervasive. But it doesn't have freedom. And the Prakriti is eternal, but she doesn't have freedom. So the real characteristic of that consciousness is its freedom, its absolute freedom. That is why other attributes are not mentioned here. But yeah, Chaitanyam iti bhava pratyena darshitam tat etat atma. Now, this consciousness is the inner reality of everything. So Atman is here not the Vedantic Atma of the self with a capital S, but it's the innermost reality of everything, means of the universe as well as of the living beings, etc. Then he asks in the next, we are not going into all the details because of the commentary. In the next section, page 11, he goes into the question, what is this Atma, Chaitanyam Atma? What is this self or this innermost reality? Ka Atma, Atma Ka, what is this self? And then he starts excluding what the self is not. And this comes also very close to the Buddhist idea of non-self. Because it is neither nasharira, prana, buddhi, shunyani. It is neither the body, nor prana. Prana means the life energy, nor buddhi, nor the intellect, nor the void. But here shunya does not mean that universal shunyata, but it means when you experience in certain states like deep sleep or in when you're unconscious, that kind of voidness, which is not a spiritual voidness. And that self is also not this shunya. So it is neither the body, nor the life energy, nor the intellect, nor the void. Because in that state, when you're in deep sleep or in unconscious, then you don't even experience your prana, you don't even experience your intellect, etc. So this is all negated. This Atma is neither. And then there's of course critical of different systems of philosophy, including the Buddhists, but this was the tradition of criticizing each other. Laukika, Charvaka, Vaidika, Yogacara, Madhyamika, Adi, Anupagatani, Atma. So he says that the Laukika means the worldly understanding of the self, that is also not it. And the Charvaka is a materialistic understanding, it's also not. And the Vaidika also, so they're also critical of the Vedic tradition or the orthodoxy. And then two schools of Buddhism are mentioned, Yogacara and Madhyamika. Apitu yatha uktam chaitanyam eva. But it is not any of this. Self is not to be identified with any of this. But, as said before, it is nothing but consciousness. Chaitanyam eva. So it's not that consciousness defines Atma, that Atma defines it. It is identified. That's what I said yesterday, that the sutras just consisting of two words. You can make all kinds of combinations, turning it this way or that way. But the essential word here is Chaitanya, not Atma. And because Atma, everything else is denied. Everything else is denied. And but still nothing is also excluded, because then he says, even in the case of those subjects who imagine the body, etc., to be the self, the Chaitanya, foundational pure consciousness, shines forth as the true subject or self, characterized by natural, original I consciousness. Akalpita aham vimarsha maya. Now, this akalpita is not imagined, not created, non-artificial, because what is denied is any artificiality of, you artificially identify yourself when you say, I am sick. You are not sick, it's the body which is sick. So this artificial attribution of the self to any one of these, the body and the prana and the intellect, etc. But still, that consciousness is that non-artificial, and they always, this school always insists on this non-artificiality of self-consciousness. Akalpita or akritrima, those who know a little bit of Sanskrit. Akritrima, non-created. Because what we imagine, that is all creation of our mind or of our feelings and so on and so on. But this is not it. So that is why that negation is so important. Otherwise we always end up with an artificial identification of our self-consciousness. So akalpita ahamba vimarsha maya satya pramatri tvena, which is the true knower. Pramatri is the knower, the true subject, which is not created, not artificial I consciousness. And then he quotes the Refuge, that is the Netra Tantra. Consciousness is the nature of self, which verily is the divine self, freed of all limiting conditions. Sarva upadi vivarjitam, freed of all limiting conditions. That is essential. This is what has been described in all the Shastras. And then comes, and every time when he quotes the Vijnana Bhairava, you will have an access to what kind of experience does this correspond. Because Vijnana Bhairava is basically experience-centered. Chittharma sarvadeheshu visheshu nasti kutrachit atascha tanmayam sarvam bhavayan bhavachit jana. Now, those of you who have done the Vijnana Bhairava, they will understand that this dharana comes rather at the end. At the end of so many practices, so many dharanas, etc. Then comes this kind of consciousness. So it's not something which you can easily have at the beginning without any practice. Now many people are asking why, see, in Buddhism you have the first teachings on this ethics, you have, and even in yoga you have yama and niyama, you have to do all this ahimsa, satya, asteya, and so on and so on. But why not here? You will not find in any text of Kashmir Shaivism these ethical instructions at the beginning. And the interesting thing is they come at the end. Because you cannot practice any ethics or any yama, niyama, unless you have already reached a certain stage of spiritual experience. Because how can you be non-violent if you have not overcome your anger and so on? And that only you have to go through that spiritual process, and then you become non-violent. Then it becomes natural. It's a second nature. And the same with compassion. So you cannot be compassionate. You can try artificially, like people who want to do very good, and they want to be very social and very charitative and so on. But they have not overcome their own inner tensions and so on. So these tensions will come out somehow. This is very easy to analyze. And there are many stories also about that. But it's interesting that in East tradition, the spiritual process is first, and the ethical and yama, niyama, and so on, that comes at the end. So this is why the Vijnana Bhairava comes at the very end of all those practices to this attitude. One has to describe it as an attitude. Well, in this translation, but can you give me Swamiji's translation? Well, it's actually my thank you. It's verse 100. You know there are 112 dharanas, and verse 100 comes this. The one which is characterized as consciousness is residing in all the bodies. There is no differentiation in anything. Therefore, if a person realizes that everything is full of that very consciousness, he conquers the world of becoming. Bhavachitjana is this very powerful expression. So, unless you can experience that universal consciousness in all the bodies, which means not only human, animal, even trees or whatever, that compassion is not possible. Because compassion will be something, you tell yourself, now I have to be very compassionate, this poor dog is suffering, so I should do something, and so on. But it doesn't come from within. That compassion comes from within when you experience that pervasive consciousness. And then you don't make the distinction, this fellow is very bad, I shouldn't talk to him, or this kind of distinctions will not arise, but only when you experience that Chaitanyam Atma. And that Chaitanyam Atma is applied in this dharana of Vijnana Bhairava. And here it is not Chaitanya, but Chit, but it's the same consciousness. And not to make any differentiation. That is the practical application of non-duality. See, non-duality is not a philosophical idea. It has to be applied in practice. So in his translation, the same self characterized by consciousness is present in all the bodies. There is no difference in it anywhere. Therefore, a person contemplating on everything as full of that consciousness can conquer transmigratory existence. Bhavajit-jana. It's very powerful. I think because of the self-introduction, we have already gone beyond the time, but still I didn't want to leave this whole morning without at least starting with the first sutra. So I think now we can have a very brief cup of tea and then go for meditation. And we will continue in the afternoon with the first sutra and then proceed, hopefully. We'll see how far we proceed. You can leave your things here, and in the meantime, maybe we can find out if there are other copies available of this. Huh?
Yes, we have made and they have prepared.
Yeah. Then those who have ordered them, they will get it. So you ask in the bookshop, and otherwise some more copies will have to be made.